the main reference point should be the law. If the national government thinks that the revenue, how is it happening in other states? Of course, that's why this thing is about separation of powers. It's about the system of governance also. Because if we talk about federalism, then in federalism you have absolute powers for the states. Now, if you take, for example, the U.S., there are states in the U.S. that the federal government cannot interfere with in certain things. So we really need to define what system of government we have, and also how do we separate powers. Because if it was not the issue of money, I'm sure Kalamta Ajedemabija. Yeah. Why are people not fighting over developing? And then they are not fighting over that, but it's because people are fighting. So it's just the issue. You cannot really also say that mind to hakta kulukulu. It is not there.
Sounds of the Week on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. Live from Juba, on air and online.
This is iRadio News.
Hello, this is iRadio 1 o'clock news. First, here are the headlines. Central Equatoria State's Security Committee has directed the demolition of illegal structures erected by land grabbers in Ladupayam in a meeting on Tuesday. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs has suggested several amendments to the NGO bill to promote balance and fair operation of national and international NGOs in the country. And the Minister of Youth and Sports has urged the youth to actively participate in sports instead of engaging in harmful activities. These stories and more coming to you in this news bulletin with me, Baria Johnson, and now the news in detail. Central Equatoria State's Security Committee has directed the demolition of illegal structures erected by land grabbers in Ladupayam in a meeting on Tuesday. During the meeting at Ladupayam headquarters, chaired by Deputy Governor Paulino Lokudo Obede, the committee also discussed land grabbing in Molobor area and the renovation of Gudele Road. Jacob Aligolo Ladu, the State Acting Minister of Information and Communications, said the committee raised concerns over land grabbing, particularly in areas of Molobur in Ladupayam and the land disputes in Nyamini and outskirts of Juba City. Minister Aligo said that the Security Committee stressed the urgent need to allocate land to its rightful owners as a means to mitigate land disputes. However, the Security Committee directed the Commissioner to issue a local order suspending all activities in the disputed area until an amicable solution is reached. He said, and I quote, "There is intensive land grabbing in the area, and the Security Committee resolved and directed the Commission of Juba County, the State Security Advisor, and the Minister of Lands, Housing and Public Utilities, and some community representatives to urgently establish modalities for demolishing structures erected on grabbed lands." End quote. Other issues discussed included the abolishment of traditional courts operating without government approval, with the state government urging the public to only engage with established Court C and Court B systems. Following the meeting, the Security Committee also visited parts of Molobur area to assess the situation on the ground regarding land grabbing. Similarly, the State Security Committee inspected ongoing road renovation works in Gudele 1 along the main road, an area popularly referred to as Low, undertaken by the Juba City Council. The inspection included oversight of water channels and the fixing of potholes along the main road to ease traffic flow and allow proper drainage, especially during the rainy season. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs has suggested several amendments to the NGO bill to promote balanced and fair operations of national and international NGOs in the country. Albino Akol-Attack, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, said the amendments will address key concerns such as the generation of income by some non-governmental organizations. He said the proposed changes in the bill were made by the Relief and Rehabilitation Commission. Attack says there is need for balanced and fair employment between national and international staff working in NGOs. He also urges the NGOs against engaging in income-generating activities and focus on voluntary services. He also said the changes aims to ensure that donor funds are properly utilized for the intended humanitarian purpose in South Sudan. The minister called for clear registration processes and a better definition of what constitutes an NGO within the legal framework. The government wants all NGO financial transactions to be conducted within South Sudan to promote accountability and transparency. Attack affirms that the government is committed to refining the bill to reflect national interest while maintaining a collaborative environment for NGOs to operate effectively. He was speaking on SSBC yesterday after a meeting with the Parliamentary Human Rights Committee.
In our side, as the ministry and the RRC, one of the issues that we raised that we wanted to see is a registration procedures. We want also to address issues of employment between the national and the international staff. That's supposed to be very fair. We want to address the utilization of the donors' funds. We want to also address issues of income-generating activities that were proposed to some NGOs, because we believe NGOs are non-profit entities. We want also to see in this act issues of transaction that being supposed to be carried out in South Sudan. All the regulatory issues between the government and the NGOs. We also reflected on the role of NGOs forum between what the RRC as the government regulatory body doing and what the NGO forum is doing.
Attack said other proposed suggestions are expected to be addressed by the bill include the relationship and the coordination between the Relief and Rehabilitation Commission as the government's regulatory body and the NGOs forum, ensuring clear roles for effective oversight.
The briefing focused on some amendments and some new ideas that have been introduced to the bill. We were able to be informed that a lot of concern that has been raised are also addressed. In our side, as the ministry and the RRC, we also raise our concern and we raise issues that we want to see in the NGO Act. One of the issues that we raised that we wanted to see is a registration procedures. What is NGO? Understanding. We want also to address issues of employment between the national and the international staff. That's supposed to be very fair. We want to address the utilization of the donors' funds that are being brought to support people of South Sudan.
The Minister of Youth and Sports has urged the youth to actively participate in sports instead of engaging in harmful activities. Speaking to iRadio following the South Sudan Cup final at Juba Stadium yesterday, Dr. Joseph Geng Akech said the government's priority will be creating sporting opportunities for young people nationwide. The minister expressed his excitement at the big turnout of young people at the stadium, describing it as a strong show of support and love for sports. Minister Geng said that the ministry plans to organize similar sporting events throughout the country and encourage more corporate investment in the sector. Referring to a recent sport financing conference, Akech registered the successful involvement of various corporate entities which have now begun supporting sport initiatives. He called on other companies to follow suit, stressing that sports contribute to peace and development, both essential for economic growth. Dr. Geng said sports play an important role in guiding young people towards positive and constructive activities like sports to deter them from joining gangs or engaging in violence.
And the ministry's priorities are in availing opportunities like this for youth across the country. So I'm really excited that when I attended this game, I saw young people feeling this beautiful stadium to the brim. This is only a demonstration of our love for sports. So we will be organizing such competitions across the country, and we are thankful to the sponsors, the rest of the corporate, that they should actually now invest in sports. Because when I organized a sports financing conference, the intention, as we have achieved it, was to invite the corporate entities, and all of them attended that. Now we can see one of the corporate entities, Zain, has come to support. So this is a call for other corporate entities that they have to invest in sports, because sports is development and peace. And peace and development are the foundations for economic growth. Young people in this country should take interest in sports, because there's no need to engage in destructive activities such as, gang violence and all this. We need to invest in sports, and we need to recognize that this.
According to a report by the research-based Rift Valley Institute published in 2021, youth violence in South Sudan is driven by a mix of social, economic, and political factors. The report said that years of conflict and political unrest have normalized violence in some communities. The Trump administration has reportedly deported about a dozen migrants from countries including Myanmar and Vietnam to South Sudan. The move, according to a federal judge, could amount to contempt of his order bearing deportation of immigrants to third countries, meaningful opportunities to challenge their deportation. According to media reports, U.S. immigration attorneys said a flight carrying a dozen people had landed in South Sudan on Tuesday. Following the deportation, immigrant right advocates asked Judge Brian Murphy, who had barred the Trump administration from swiftly deporting migrants to countries other than their own, to order their return. They expressed fear that the deportees might be tortured or prosecuted if sent to South Sudan. In response, Murphy told a lawyer with the U.S. Department of Justice during a virtual hearing that the potential violation might constitute criminal contempt. He said he was considering ordering a plane carrying the migrants to the African country to turn around. According to the immigrant lawyers, they learned that nearly a dozen migrants held at a detention facility in Texas were flown to South Sudan on Tuesday morning. The migrants' lawyers said they learned their client had been flown to South Sudan on Tuesday morning. A spouse of a Vietnamese man held at a detention center in Texas emailed his lawyer saying he and 10 other individuals were deported as well. South Sudan authorities have yet to comment on the matter. You are listening to iRadio Afternoon News. South Sudan has secured $130 million through the Nile Basin Initiative to import electricity from Uganda. Nile Basin representative engineer Manyon Deng revealed this in an interview on the state-owned broadcaster SSBC on Monday. According to Deng, the $80 million USD of this grant is coming from the African Development Bank and the remaining $50 million United States dollars from the European Union. He said this power from Uganda is expected to cover the whole of Equatoria, Upper Nile and Bahr el Ghazal. The Nile Basin official further said the World Bank also promised to take over financing of the distribution once the power reaches South Sudan. The government, as stated by Deng, is in the process of signing the grant, and the project will officially commence in early 2026. Responding to why this project instead of the Fula project, Engineer Deng said Fula needs $1.5 billion and an average of 8 years to have it generating power. In July 2024, a Uganda-South Sudan electricity sharing agreement disclosed a $300 million funding from international development partners to fund the project. Speaking at the time, Dr. Isaac Arikwe, the program coordinator of Nile Equatorial Lakes Subsidiary Action, said South Sudan will receive about $100 million from the European Union, $59 million from the African Development Bank, and $148 million to be given as a loan to Uganda by the AFDB. Dr. Arikwe underscored that South Sudan will have to account for the deficit of about 25 million USD as a sign of ownership of the mega power sharing project between the two countries. South Sudan has the world's lowest electricity access rate, with only 7% of its 13 million population having access to electricity, according to Global Data and Business Intelligence Forum. And finally, authorities in Rumbek, East County in Lake State, have recovered 18 heads of cattle from an identified armed criminal who had stolen them on Friday evening. Zakaria Malwal Anyon, the commissioner of Rumbek East County, confirmed that the 18 cows were rescued from raiders after exchanging gunfire with security forces. He said the cattle were driven to the county headquarters, where they will be returned to their rightful owners. You are listening to iRadio News, and now to the regional and international news with my colleague Helen Samuel.
Thanks, Barrier Johnson. In some of the stories trending across the globe, Uganda's parliament on Tuesday passed an amended law that permits military tribunals to try civilians, prompting protests from the opposition, who said the move violated a Supreme Court ruling in January that banned such trials. The practice, in use for the last 2 decades, has long been criticized by opposition politicians and rights campaigners who accuse the government of using court martials to silence opponents, which it denies. In a post on the X platform, Parliament said the legislation had been passed. Elsewhere, a Congolese former prime minister was convicted of embezzling millions from a huge failed agriculture venture in one of the highest profile corruption cases brought under President Felix Tshisekedi against the government of his predecessor. Matata Ponyo Mapon, who served as prime minister from 2012 to 2016 under the then President Joseph Kabila, was convicted on Tuesday in a case involving the embezzlement of 245 million US dollars. He was sentenced to 10 years forced labor, the Constitutional Court said. And finally, people in Gaza tell the BBC the situation there is getting harder every day as global experts warn of an imminent famine in the territory. The UN says its teams in Gaza have not yet been able to distribute aid despite dozens of supply trucks entering over the past 2 days. Israel officials say 93 trucks entered Gaza on Tuesday, but the situation there remains very catastrophic. Those are some of the stories from around the world. Barrier Johnson.
Thank you, Helen Samuel. And now to the sports news with Lasuba Memo.
Thanks, Barrier Johnson. In the world of sports, let's begin at home. Jammus FC Juba has clinged to the 14th edition of the South Sudan Cup, defeating Al Merrikh Bentiu in a dramatic final decided by penalties. The match ended in a goalless draw after regular time, but Jammus triumphed 4-2 in the penalty shootout, securing back-to-back titles after defeating Al Merrikh in last year's final. These two sides have now faced each other 5 times, with Jammus dominating their rivalry by winning 4 matches, while Al Merrikh has claimed just 1 victory. In the third place playoff, Awil United beat Koryom. In the third place playoff, Awil United beat Koryom Bor, securing the bronze position in the tournament. Jammus FC swept several major awards as best player, best goalkeeper and best coach. Meanwhile, a player from Al Merrikh Bentiu earned the top scorer award for the tournament. Action continues today in the South Sudan Premier League with 2 key matches scheduled. In the first fixture, last place Nile City will face Al Salam Awil in a rescheduled Week 17 encounter. Nile City is hoping to turn its season around after a string of poor performances, while Al Salam will look to capitalize on their opponents' struggles and move up the league table. The second match features a promising clash between 2 sides riding high on recent victories. Al Olympi Al Rang, who defeated Nile City in their last outing, will take on Koryom Bor, who are also in form after beating Al Hilal. With both teams building momentum, today's game is expected to be a competitive showdown. These matches could significantly impact the standings as the league enters a critical phase. In the NBA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the Oklahoma City Thunder's fight back from a rusty start to beat the Minnesota Timberwolves and win the first game of their NBA Western Conference Final Series. With Julius Randle pouring in 20 first half points, Minnesota was on course for an upset against the top seeds after taking a 48-44 lead into halftime. But the Thunder rallied in the final two quarters, with Gilgeous Alexander scoring 20 of his 31 points to help his side to a 114-88 victory. That's all in the world of sports. Back to you, Barry Johnson.
Thank you, Lasuba. This is iRadio News, and to end this bulletin, here are the headlines once again. Central Equatoria State Security Committee has directed the demolition of illegal structures erected by land grabbers in Ladupayam in a meeting on Tuesday. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs has suggested several amendments to the NGO bill to promote balance and fair operation of national and international NGOs in the country. And the Minister of Youth and Sports has urged the youth to actively participate in sports instead of engaging in harmful activities. That's the end of iRadio Afternoon News. If there is a story or an event you would like iRadio to cover or report about, please send us a text message on +211 925 287870. It's also our WhatsApp number. Follow us on X at iRadio Juba, like our Facebook page, iRadio, subscribe to our YouTube channel at iRadio South Sudan. You can also visit our website and listen to us online at www.iradio.org. Stay tuned for the news in Arabic at hour. I am Baria Johnson. Thank you for listening.
Sounds of the Week on iRadio.
We are talking about one government. If it's central or the national government, the main reference point should be the law. If the national government thinks that the revenue, how is it happening in other states? Of course, that's why this thing is about separation of powers. It's about the system of governance also. Because if we talk about federalism, then in federalism you have absolute powers for the states. Now, if you take, for example, the U.S., there are states in the U.S. that the federal government cannot interfere with in certain things. So we really need to define what system of government we have, and also how do we separate powers. Because if it was not the issue of money, I'm sure Kalamta Ajede Mabija. Yeah. Why are people not fighting over developing? And then they are not fighting over that, but it's because people are fighting. So it's just the issue. You cannot really also say that we allow them mind to hack the kulukulu. It is not there.
Sounds of the Week on